So our guest speaker tonight is Bob Bennett. Bob is a man of law. He is the owner of the Bennett law firm. He's been working as counselor, attorney, and prosecutor, U.S. prosecutor, for almost 29
prosecutor, not persecutor.
Okay,
It's prosecutor.
so it's been almost like 30 years. That's the last number I remember. But let me tell you one big thing about him. He has been chosen, I think 2 years ago, as the top lawyer in the state of Texas. Not in Houston, but in the state of Texas. So he's a man of a lot of accomplishment. Other than that, I am proud to be of his friend. And we have led trips to Turkey together in different groups. But the most important achievement, he is a grandfather.
Twice.
Father, twice.
Two grandsons.
And man of God. So I look forward to his lecture. I'm going to be listening to him, like you guys. I look forward to it. Bob, thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you. My pleasure. My honor.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's the first time I've been on your campus, and so I'm very impressed. I had to dodge a few alligators getting in, but that's all right. That's kind of a challenge. And the most important thing about this class this evening is that it's not going to be on the final exam, okay? So you don't have to worry about that. But we are going to be talking about something that is dear to my heart, which is both the law and religion. And so there may be some things that you have no voice in this class. I just think that's amazing. But did we scare them off? Anyway, again, I appreciate the opportunity to come down here and teach. I actually teach a class in business ethics at Lone Star, where my office is, Lone Star North Harris. And I've enjoyed doing that and, of course, giving a presentation. So anyway, during this presentation, I'm really trying to do more of a dialogue with you than a monologue. So at any time you have some questions or some concerns, feel free to just raise your hand or say you have a question, and we'll go forward with that. So that's what I'm hoping that we will accomplish. In fact, I tell you what, we ought to give a grade for participation. Okay, so do we have a grade for participation at all?
Yeah.
Okay, so the only thing you have to worry about, okay, so this changes the whole dynamic. You are going to be graded tonight on participation. And your Professor Ali is going to keep a list and check off each one of the students who participates or doesn't participate. So, what are we talking about tonight? Man, thank goodness, we get one man here, one guy.
Bob, I'm still here.
A student, one student. So good, I feel a little bit better that I'm not alone without Ali. Okay, so we're going to be talking about law and religion.
Bob, I'm sorry to interrupt. Would you like to say about the video?
Oh yeah, we are going to do a video of this. Oprah had called me and she said that she wanted to do a special on this, and who knows?
Yeah.
So is there anybody in here, if you don't want to be videoed, and we're probably just going to do your back of your head anyway, but if for some reason, whatever, you don't want to be on the video, then let us know, so be sure that we'll actually put a sack over your head, and then, no, if you don't want to be on it, just kind of let us know. Now, I understand this group, or the last group that was taught, was photographed at, I think I went to First Presbyterian Church. And so everybody was accepted to that. Hopefully you'll take some other photos. So if there's anything that you don't want to do, then let us know now, okay? Or send us a note, or be sure to let us know. Okay, so with that aside, participation is important. Okay, so where we're going to start today is many, many years ago, and due to your professor, we're going to start in Turkey, okay? And if anybody can tell me anything about Göbekli Tepe, I'm going to be astonished, astounded, and impressed. Göbekli Tepe, especially if you're an anthropology major or a history major. or know anything about this place. Predating Stonehenge by 6,000 years, Turkey's stunning Göbekli Tepe upends the conventional view of the rise of civilization. So why is this interesting? Why is this important? We've all heard about the pyramids, which date from around 2 to 3,000 BC in Egypt. If any of you have been to England, they have what's called the Stonehenge, which is around 5,000 BC. And this place called Göbekli Tepe dates from, and we're not quite sure, 5,000 BC to 10,000 BC. And this is in we'll see a video, we'll see a slide of it. It's in southern Turkey, close to the Syrian border, 10 miles to the Syrian border. And 3 years ago, your professor and I were there. I don't think we'd go back quite that close to the Syrian border today, but that's where we were, and we had a chance to spend the afternoon in Göbekli Tepe. And Göbekli Tepe is a Turkish word for fat belly. And I'll explain that and what this is all about as we go through these slides. So up on a hill, very desolate hill, that many archaeologists and maybe even anthropologists thought was what we call a medieval cemetery. In fact, there were Byzantine symbols on the gravestones, and a Byzantine symbol would be what? History majors. From the Byzantine period would be what type of symbol that you probably have around your neck?
Cross.
A cross. And the Byzantine period was from around 350 AD up to 1453. And this probably was a Byzantine, because of the gravestones and crosses, a Byzantine cemetery. And so the other archaeologists kind of passed this site by up on the hill and didn't realize what a find there was below. Okay, so the area we're talking about is in Turkey. And, okay, this is going to be geography too. What country is right next to Turkey right here?
The top one?
I'm sorry?
The top one?
Yeah, right next to it. Turkey is the only place in the world where the country is in 2 continents. And so the top up there would be what country? What borders Turkey across from the city of Istanbul? History, humanities, geography major. Come on, guess. Give me a guess.
I think the other one's Greece.
Yeah, of course it's Greece.
No,
Right
it's
here.
Greece,
It's
but
Greece,
I don't-
okay? It's
I don't
Greece.
know what's north of it.
So there's Greece, and then there's Syria, Iran, Iraq, and Azerbaijan. What else? Azerbaijan.
Is it Albania?
Georgia, okay. So those are the countries that border on Turkey. So I just want to get you situated. Here's Istanbul. Istanbul was previously called?
Constantinople.
Good, that's good. Up until 1453. The capital is Ankara. Mount Ararat, which is famous for, the legend has, religious majors. What happened on Mount Ararat? Flood. Big ship.
Noah?
Well, Noah's not there, but what they think was there, what?
The Ark?
The ark. The ark. The tradition has it that the Mount Ararat was where the ark landed. So that's the Mount Ararat. And down here by San Urfa is Göbekli Tepe. Okay. And this area at the time that we're talking about here, which is so interesting, is in this Syria, southern Turkey area. Now, why this is important is this was before there were any type of domesticated plants and domesticated animals. And so the type of people, those anthropology majors, would be called what? Anthropology majors? Around 5,000 to 10,000 BC, they were called manufacturers, they were called car dealers, they were called
Hunter-gatherers.
hunter-gatherers. That was the only type of business they had was really hunting and gathering. And gathering meant they would go out and take maybe seeds from wheats or wild wheats or that type of thing. So the importance of that is there's absolutely no organization that we know about except for what happened here at Göbekli Tepe. Okay? So we're talking, you know, pretty old. And so in my class at Lone Star, if you're 5 minutes late, you either have to tell a joke, you have to do a dance, or you get to sing a song. Now, is that the same rule here?
No.
No, it's not. Well, you're lucky you don't go to my class.
I have an excuse. I drove all the way from downtown.
Okay. What do we have here? Okay. So on the hillside, hunter-gatherers came together and built what was the very first that we know about civic or religious site in the world. Older than Angkor Wat, older than anything in India, older than anything we have in the United States, older than the Stonehenge, okay? And the way they did this was that they erected circles with stones, and these were 5 to 10 tons of pillars that they carved and then dragged them from a quarry about 2 or 3 miles away, without animals and without any type of mechanics, obviously, okay? And they erected them in this type of circle. One theory is that then they put a thatch covering over it. Now, exactly what they did here, we have no way of knowing. There's no recording, there's no manuscript. They could have been doing karaoke, they could have been knitting. We really don't know. But the symbolism that's on these carvings is quite interesting, because this, as far as we know, are the first. We had one art major, right? And first carvings of an artistic nature, even older than the caves in France. Okay, and these are the type of carvings that are usually animalistic. You see kind of a turkey-looking thing over here, a wild boar, maybe some ducks, and here's a scorpion right here. So the artist or the priest or whoever carved these somehow identified with these animals and wanted those images to be on these carvings. Okay? Now, why would they do that? This is your last class? Okay, so you've had a semester of religion. Storytelling, I think that's a great answer. Something about that. I don't have a photo of this, but there's also a carving of a woman giving birth. I mean, there's no question about that portrayal. And so maybe there's some type of fertility rites connected with it. So all over this hill site, they haven't found any type of dwellings. They haven't found any type of, there are a lot of animal bones, which probably they ate, brought food in, ate there. There were no burial sites. And so we really don't know exactly what they used this for. The oldest civic religious site in the world. Now, this is again artistic portrayal of what these people were doing. They probably lived in small little huts with some type of barrier covering. And then over here, you see kind of a primitive method of erecting this. Up here, you see them dragging by logs and pulling these huge pillars and then arranging them in this site, okay? So, important to us, important to our discussion tonight, do you think there had to be some organizational skills as they came together and did this? Was there some type of religious significance that they, again, this is hunter and gatherers, there'd be, this is right after the Ice Age, and so the ice had receded from northern Turkey, and so for the first time, people were starting to sort of socialize. And the question is, was this a religious activity Was it somehow some type of fraternal? Was it some type of fertility? Very soon after this, we do have evidence of domestication of plants in southern Turkey. Okay, so that started and was something that we do know about. Well, I think I'll go next door and tell them to turn it down a little. Okay, so here's another portrayal of how the erection of the buildings was, and this is another. On the end of most of these pillars, there seems to be some type of humanoid portrayal, and the way they think about this is here are the hands like this, here's the belly, here's the feet, and so at the end of these pillars, they're sort of sitting like this, and they call that Göbekli Tepe, the sort of fat belly, and that's where that name came from in Turkish. And was this a gift to the gods? Was it, again, to bring some type of community activity together so that people would be united? We don't know. This is the actual quarry, and you'll see this is one of the old pillars here that they would carve out and then take it out of the quarry and drag it about 1 mile, 2 miles to the site where it's erected.
But you can use the arrows on the keypad, so you don't need to use mouse.
I should do that, shouldn't I? Okay. I will do that. Okay. So that was, I'm going to go back here because I think that's the last of the slides of Göbekli Tepe, okay? And the other part of this is, was there some organization or agreement or contract or law that applied to this type of building and site that these people came together and did? We don't know. But starting at this point in history, and really what we know in all human history, men and women were coming together to do some type of activity. And so we're going to be talking tonight about the combination of both law and religion. So every one of you now have a good definition of religion because of your text and because of the excellent teaching of Professor Ali in your own mind. But when you say the law, I'm just curious, what does that mean to you when you hear somebody, and especially in this context of what we're talking about tonight, of religion and law? What's the first thing that comes into your mind? And what do we do again in my class is the last person in has to answer first. The last person in has to answer first. Are you the last person in?
No, but I'll answer.
Okay, so when you think of the law, what do you think of?
Rules that I have to follow if I want.
You were not the last person in.
No, I don't.
But you're going to be the second one to answer. Go ahead.
Rules for guide behavior.
Rules for guiding behavior. Okay, so let's take that for a minute. Rules for guiding behavior. Second person in, what else would you add to the law besides rules for gathering behavior?
It's something that I have to accept to be part of society.
Something you have to what for society?
Follow to be part of society and part of. Yeah.
Okay, so both rules for behavior and things you have to do to follow for be part of society. So both of those definitions, how could we use both of those definitions for religion? Rules that you have to follow in order to fit in?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're in agreement with that. Those both apply. So what is the difference between law and religion then?
Well, wouldn't religion be more on,
I'm sorry, speak up.
wouldn't with religion be more of morals and values, guidelines of rules of things not to do, as to where with the law they're actually making punishments or consequences for breaking those sets of rules, but they still go hand in hand.
There's been no punishment in religion for breaking rules?
There has, but I'm saying they all have a core set of rules that today's law, or even then as it goes through the years, has been built upon. So I mean, they go hand in hand.
Okay, I agree with the hand in hand. I agree completely. Yes, ma'am. You got to speak up because we got some competition back there.
The law, it is accepted
around, I guess, the world that you have to abide by it, but religion is only in a certain sect of people that they have to abide by those rules.
Okay, so you're saying the differentiation between law and religion is that law goes around the world and religion is localized.
Well, not localized, but to a certain set of people that follow those rules.
Okay, and so as for a rule of religion such as do unto others as you'd like them to do unto you, that's a rule that only applies to Christians and is not found in any other religion.
Well, no.
Okay, so there are some rules that apply both in all religions. If we're talking religion, we're talking about, number one, honor your God, whatever that is, and that applies to all of it. So, again, how do we differentiate, if we can, between what is the law and what is religion? Because that's the purpose of tonight. And I want to hear somebody I haven't heard, because Ali's taking a list. You people that have been tardy, we're going to get participation grades, if nothing else, tonight. And so, yes, ma'am.
Religion's a choice, the law isn't.
The religion is a choice.
You can choose to follow any religion, but you can't choose to follow the law. There's a consequence.
Okay. Has there been times, though, where religion didn't give you a choice? You had to follow it? For instance, if you were coming to the United States in 1620 and you were part of what group, American history majors, in 1620? I'm sorry?
Protestant?
Of course they were Protestant, but what was the group that came?
Quakers.
I'm sorry?
Quakers?
Well, they were a little bit later, but they were the Puritans. The Puritans came and they had absolute rules. And in fact, kind of an interesting cultural thing, if you haven't seen it, there's a movie called Witch that recently came out. And in this movie, Witch, a family of the Puritans was ostracized, punished, and had to leave the confines and go into the wild, and things happened to them. So, yes, all of these are correct answers. And it really is hard to differentiate at times between religion and law. And in fact, for instance, in the Judeo tradition, there was really no differentiation between what was religion and what was law. The law was given, the law of Moses, those laws, the law and the 7 books of the Old Testament, those were the laws that you as a person in the society had to follow. And at different times, different religions had similar rules and regulations. Okay, going back again, this is there was a goddess of justice in Egypt. And so again, I just want to show you how universal this concept of law and justice was. It's also kind of interesting that the stela that she's on is not that much different than the stela you saw at Göbekli Tepe. The code of Liptet Ishtar was probably the oldest code that we know about. This would be in the Mid-East, dealing with what it was written, what the rules and laws were. If a man rented an ox and damaged his eye, he shall pay 1/2 its price. If a man rented an ox and broke his horn, he shall pay 1/4 its price. If a man rented an ox and damaged his tail, he shall pay 1/4 of its price. So there were certain laws that had to be followed. Now, when it came to more serious crimes, what generally was the punishment in this code, or in what we'll talk about, Hammurabi's code? Eye for an eye. It's just kind of almost automatic that we realize that even in 2,000 years ago, that was the punishment if you put someone's eye out, if you killed somebody, if somebody could, your family member could kill the other person. How that was carried out, the due process, the trial, etc., all varied, but the concept at this time was retaliation. Okay, this is a stela of Hammurabi, which was is kind of considered one of the oldest giver of laws, and this was in 1750 BC in what is present-day Iran, and almost all of the Mid-East, in one way or another, was influenced for many, many years by Hammurabi's code. Now, let's go back to sort of our tradition. And this is the first, what case? What kind of case was this? Murder case, okay? One of the very first murder cases. And what was the punishment for this murder?
Wasn't he
What was the punishment for the murder of Abel?
Didn't he say he was going to permanently mark him so that way everyone knew?
Permanently mark him, also banished. He was banished, right?
Yeah.
And so we get away from just killing for killing's sake or revenge and into the concept of somewhat mercy, okay, here in this concept. Judgment of Solomon, okay. This was something that you know about. The judgment of Solomon, the wisdom of Solomon, and this was dealing with somebody who hasn't spoken. Tell me about this famous judgment involving the death of an infant.
2 women were.
Have you talked? Okay, so you can't talk anymore. I want to hear somebody that talk. This is basic, also basic information, culture, knowledge, law that you should know about. Judgment of Solomon, portrayed in many, many beautiful pieces of art. Okay, so I'm going to give more hints. There are 2 mothers. They came to Solomon with a dead baby. And Solomon said, do you both claim to own the baby? And they said yes. And so Solomon in his wisdom said what?
Cut them in half.
Cut them in half. Okay? And then what happened?
The real mother said,
Go ahead, speak up.
oh,
Come on.
okay, that's right. The real mother said, no, give it to her, to the
What?
other lady.
And
Because
Solomon in
she
his
was-
wisdom said that must be the real mother because she would rather make sure that the baby lived than be cut in half. Okay? And so this was the giver of the law as far as the Jewish tradition is concerned. This is Michelangelo's David, and the actual horns on the top are actually supposed to be a portrayal, not of evil or anything, but actually sort of radiance coming from the face of Moses. Not too sure that concept really translated, but who am I to judge Michelangelo? The tablets, this is one of the basics again, and we talked about law for the Jews. At this time, they were where? When the tablets were given, you studied religion, where was the 10 tablets given? And it was not Pasadena, I promise you. I'm sorry?
Mount Sinai.
Came down from Mount Sinai, yes. Came down in the desert and gave the 10 tablets, or the 2 tablets with the laws of the commandments, okay? But at the same time, there are other societies that were developing laws. And in China, there was the, not really the law of Confucius, but there was a code and an ethics and a morality that developed in China. So I don't know whether anybody is of Chinese orientation or heritage, but even today, over 2,000 years ago, there is still Confucian scholars and Confucian influence in Chinese society. Obviously, the Chinese society today is a non-sectarian. They don't believe, the government is a communist government, so they don't promote religion, but at the same time they are influenced even today by the sayings, beliefs, and attitudes of Confucius. In Greece, right north of Italy, north of Turkey, you had the laws that the Greeks developed in their city-states, okay? Again, the religion at that time was more of a multitude of gods. And here's Socrates and Socrates' death. Now we're moving a little further into history, closer to our time, but you had church rulers who were developing ecclesiastical law. Okay, so these would be rules and regulations depending upon the power at the time. There were what we call fighting popes and religious leaders who established empires and imposed religious law. And given again sort of the heritage here, which is kind of interesting, can somebody tell me where the first Christian empire was? The first Christian empire. I had talked about that I'd given you a hint earlier. Keep it up. Speak up.
The Roman Empire, its capital.
Good Roman Empire. Go ahead. You can get a helper. You can get a helpline.
Yeah, Constantinople.
Okay. And what was that empire?
The Roman Empire.
It's called the Eastern Empire, but it's also known as. I'm sorry. Byzantine. The Byzantium was the area. And why this is important is that during the reign of the Byzantines from around 350 to 1453, almost all of the basic Christian doctrine and codes and conclaves started in a place called Turkey during the reign of the Byzantines, okay? And you talk about certain, the Nicene Creed. If you really study church history, you'll learn about the Nicene Creed, which was from Nicaea, Turkey. And this was the emperors living in Constantinople would say, we want to be sure that we have the right religion and we're following what would be the true faith. And so they'd bring all of the bishops in and they'd talk about the different things that were important to the Christians at that time. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about another development called Sharia law, okay? And where did Sharia law come from? Let's see here. You can kind of look up there, maybe. Who hasn't participated? Let's see here. Who hasn't participated?
From the Quran.
Oh, that's a good eye. It's good in the Quran. Okay, so Sharia law had its origin. The Quran really is not a code of law. Okay, if you read the Quran, it's not a code of law such as the Pentateuch, where there are actually laws laid out about how many things. There's some references to certain things, but it's not a code of law that we have in some of the other religious books. But you take the interpretation of Muhammad and you take the Shada, am I pronouncing that right? The other book, Shada? The other religious book that, there's the Hadatha, and then there's two other books that kind of go along with the Quran, and I always get those wrong.
Well, it is
A tradition.
Quran and the Hadith.
Hadith, okay, and then there was a series of interpretation and scholars over the years that would study the pronouncements of Muhammad, what's in the Quran, and those were some developments in the Quran rule, okay, or in the Quran law, okay, and the origin of this, just as there were certain primitive rites and rituals that were followed in the Bible, in Ecclesiastes and other books, there are also these early developments of the law in the Quran, such as a Muslim man must marry a Muslim. An adult woman requires her father, male guardian, consent to marry. So if you go to the Quran today, there are these rules and regulations that appear probably to the modern mind to be a little bit harsh, if not barbaric, okay? And there's also, we've been kind of talking in and out of what happened in Turkey. And so Turkey, from 1453 to about 1922, followed Sharia law, okay? And then the person who took over Turkey, you students of world history, who really in many ways pulled Turkey out of the Middle Age and became put it on its road to modernality. Anybody know? Ali? Ataturk, who is really considered sort of the combination of Jefferson, Washington, and Franklin in Turkey. So he wanted to make sure that religion did not play a role in the government. So you had, again, this interrelationship between law and religion the government was certainly Islamic up until that point, continues in many ways. The tradition, the culture, the religion in Turkey is Islamic, but technically there's really no promotion of religion of any type. There's some laws that actually say that you can't wear certain religious jewelry and things like that. And so that was what Ataturk's attitude was, to try to bring Turkey into the modern age. And obviously he succeeded in many ways. Okay, so that deals with Sharia law, okay? And what's going on right now in parts of Europe where there are now large segments of Muslims living, there's a tension between applying the Sharia law and the traditional laws in Europe. And most of those laws came from a little guy by the name of Napoleon in the Napoleonic Code. And so the civil laws in Europe generally follow the Napoleonic Code, and there is this conflict now going on between Sharia and what's going on in Europe. There's also, here in the United States, the state of Oklahoma recently voted to ban Sharia law, even though not a whole lot of Muslims in Oklahoma, not a whole lot, nor are there no Sharia courts, but Oklahoma's always kind of gone their own way, I might say. And so they wanted to be sure that no one was going to be sneaking around putting together Sharia law in Oklahoma. I can talk some more about this. Let's go back a little bit. We're going to talk about Roman law, okay? And the Roman law developed through the role of the senators who ruled Rome up until Julius Caesar, okay? And they had a code that had to be followed. We can see an example of this in the law that was important to the Romans. The Apostle Paul, at the time that he was arrested for causing riots and problems, he was able to claim that he was a Roman citizen, and said that he had the right, especially if the death penalty was involved, to be tried in front of the emperor. So that was the law at that time. And then we get the whole travels of Paul back to Rome and what happened to him there. So this started in the Roman law during their formation. Now we're going to jump to England. England was invaded by lots of people, including the Romans, including the Vikings, and then finally they were invaded by the Normans. And the Normans started really trying to develop more of a kingdom there. And they wanted the king to understand that there were certain rights of the individual, and that the king was not all powerful, even though basically he was. And so this is one of the most basic documents signed by King John in 1215, in which he sets out his rules, what he can do and what he can't do. And so this is to us in the United States, because this was in 1215, and the first English settlers came to England in what year? In 1215 was the Magna Carta, and then we actually sent people who were going to settle, especially in New England. They were called what?
Pilgrims?
They were pilgrims, but they also called Puritans. The Puritans, they were sent because they wanted to keep their religion pure, okay? It's really true. And so we have the Puritans coming, but they were familiar with this concept that the government should be limited. They were very religious, but at the same time, certain laws would be applied to how they operated, okay? I'm just a little bit more in the middle age, and I want to be sure I cover everything. This is the trial of Joan of Arc, and she was tried in front of an ecclesiastical court. And Joan of Arc was in a class full of women, with one exception. The Joan of Arc did what? So we're going to cover lots of things tonight. Who was Joan of Arc?
She was a martyr of like the French against the English.
That's good. She defeated the French at the Battle of Orleans, and then she was captured, and then she was tried as a witch. And the history of her being tried is really interesting, because she said that she saw these visions, and that was enough for them to say that she was a witch, and she ended up being what?
Burned at the stake.
Burned at the stake, okay? But here, as you can see here, the bishop or cardinal over there on the left was part of the trial of Joan of Arc, okay? Now, the history of the United States, we've talked a little bit about this, but this is a beautiful painting dealing with the commission of Christopher Columbus, okay, in front of Ferdinand and Isabella, okay, and to read the literature in these letters that Christopher Columbus wrote, he just didn't say, we're going to go over and try to find gold and everybody's going to get wealthy. Long, extensive letters dealing with how they're going to colonize and make Christians of everybody and claim this to the glory of God. So, again, the combination of the rule of law being the emperor, Ferdinand and Isabella, and the religion that also infused everything that Christopher Columbus did. Of course, if you were an Indian in Cuba or Central America and you saw these guys coming, you probably wouldn't think they were too Christian, but that's another story. At the same time, I want to talk about some of the oppressive nature of religion, and when you combine religion and politics, or religion and the law. And we have here a Goya, who was a painter from, art major, Fernando Goya, from Spain, one of the most famous painters in all of Spanish history, Fernando Goya. Beautiful, beautiful, interesting paintings. And here he's showing the Inquisition. The guy with the dunce caps are on. And so the law is being used, ecclesiastical law is being used to suppress any type of dissent. So at this time, this would be around, since the painting was 1812, 1814. Prior to that, the Spanish Inquisition at the top, 1478. And during the Inquisition, prior to that, what happened to certain populations in Spain?
They were killed,
They were killed, and they were also what?
tortured,
Tortured, and also what?
interrogated,
Interrogated, and then
shoved away.
banished. Okay, so most of the Jewish population was banished if they were not killed or converted. Okay, and a really interesting thing, one of the big things in Spain, if you've been to Spain, is the Spanish ham. Okay, and they very, very much, almost like Americans eat turkey at Thanksgiving, the Spaniards are very big on ham. Okay, and so one of the ways of testing whether or not you're a true Christian or not would be to serve ham. So if you were a Muslim or if you were Jewish and true to that faith, you would not eat it, and so they knew that you were not a true Christian. Conversion is not true, and so then you'd be either tortured, thrown out, or whatever. Now, another point of interest here is many of the Jews during the Inquisition, 1478, were sent where? Where were they banished to? Where did they go to? They went to San Antonio? No. Guess. You got to get a participation grade. You got to say something. You haven't talked.
The Ottoman Empire?
That was close. Many of them went to Istanbul. Basically, Rome and Istanbul were the main sources that allowed Jews to leave, and they were banished from Spain. Okay. Now we're going back again to England, and this was at the time of Henry VIII. I just think this is a beautiful painting of Henry deciding, again, this combination of religion and law. So, I hate to put anybody on the spot, but, you know, I'm not your teacher, and I don't have a contract here. Is there any Episcopalians here? Anybody? Oh, there we go. Okay. So, What's the connection of the Church of England and Henry VIII?
Because he said, help the Episcopal set it up, breaking away from the Catholic Church.
Right, and the reason he did that was, why did he want to do that?
Because of his marriage leading to divorce.
Okay, he had a bad marriage, but what was more important to him than having a bad marriage? If it was just a bad marriage, he probably wouldn't do anything. If he didn't like his wife, I mean, he could have banished her.
He needed care.
He needed an heir, okay? He needed a male heir, okay? And so, again, the combination of law and religion, that Henry thought that it was so important to make sure there was not a dynastic war or that heirs would not fight, etc., that he came up with all these reasons to take Catherine of Aragon, his first wife, and get her to go back to Aragon. Of course, the other following wives weren't quite as fortunate to get to go back, but that's on another class. Okay. Now, we're on coming to the period of American colonization, American law, and again, this combination of religion in the United States and law. And so the Puritans were given a charge to come over here. One of the things that they were told to do initially was to start to create a sort of heaven on earth. This was the plan of the Puritans. Some of them went from England to the United States or to Massachusetts. Others went to Holland and then over. But one of the sermons that was preached in the command of John Winthrop was that they were to be like a city set on a hill. Okay, there's some scriptural references to making sure your light shines, and that was the thing that was trying to drive these people to have this Christian environment, Christian city in the United States. In 1620, as they came to Plymouth Colony, they signed what was called the Mayflower Compact. And Ali, how are we doing on time here? 48. When is this class?
Another 10 minutes, 12 minutes, and then we can move to Q&A. We need more time?
I actually told me that I could go till 10. Didn't you tell me that?
I don't know, but...
Okay. Let me read just a little bit from, if I can get to it here real quickly. Okay, so this is from, I want you to just get the tone of the charge of what Winthrop was talking about this in the, basically sermon that he gave, okay? I'm going to do that, and then we'll talk about the Mayflower Compact. So this is just a paragraph from the slide previously. Now, if the Lord shall please to hear us, bring us peace to the place we desire, then haveth he ratified this covenant and sealed our commission. The covenant they felt that they had between God and the Puritans going to the United States. There was a covenant relationship. And will expect a strict performance of the articles contained in it, but if we neglect the observation of these articles, and these are the rules, if you were coming with this group to the United States, 1620, you had strict rules about worship, about clothing, about relationships, and had to be followed. But if we shall neglect the observation of these articles, which are the ends we have propounded, and dissembling with our God, shall fail to embrace this present world and prosecute our carnal intention, seeking greater things for ourselves and our posterity, seeking things for ourselves and not for God, the Lord will surely break out in wrath against us and be revenged of such a people and make us know the price of the breach of such a covenant. Surely the Lord will surely break out in wrath against us, okay? Doesn't quite sound like Joel Osteen in some of his sermons because it was a little different time, okay? As far as the Mayflower Compact, it also carried that same type of language dealing with the importance of how they were there to having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith and honor of our king and country a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia. Did they land in Virginia? No. They landed in Massachusetts. A little miscalculation, but again, the important part of this was how important this was, that the religious aspect of the founding was to these people. And then shortly after this, we had, I want to talk about this, we had this right here. I want you to really think about this for a minute. The reason I find this interesting is that there is no more homogeneous group that ever came to the United States as a group than the Puritans who came in 1620. And in 1690, there's what was called the Salem witch trials. Okay? This is the first and only time in our history where people were tried, and this is, again, the combination of law and religion that I find interesting. They were tried based on specter, I'm going to be so impressed if somebody gets this, specter evidence. Does anybody know what specter evidence was? I didn't Guess.
I'll guess, I don't know if it's right.
Okay.
If my pop culture kind of made me have to prove it, was that they drowned? No.
No, that was the result, but the specter evidence was this. I saw Ali flying through the air on a witch broom and going to a group and he drank blood. That's my testimony. Well, was anybody else there? No. Did anybody else see this? No. But I know that happened, okay? That was the type of testimony many young girls gave into the Salem witch trials. Over 16 people lost their lives, and 3 dogs were convicted of being witches or witch dogs. And when they started then charging people in higher places, they quickly stopped. So one of the most interesting, in a sort of weird, perverted sense, trials going on with these people who were so religious and so dedicated was the Salem witch trials. I also have kind of a personal interest in this because one of my foremothers, Bradbury, was charged as a witch in 1690. Luckily, she was not executed, but she had to go through the trial. And so that may be why I'm so enchanting and charming. Let's move on. This is trial again. This is the guy that was executed, again, the art of it. The Declaration of Independence, obviously talking about the importance of God in that. This is the letter that George Washington wrote to a congregation, to a Jewish congregation, and again, a combination of law and religion, talking to the Jewish congregation. I don't know whether I put the whole thing on there. No. But it's a beautiful statement that George Washington gave, that the children of Abraham have nothing to fear, that we will all be together in this new country, okay? The Bill of Rights has rights about freedom of religion and freedom that you do not have to be a certain religion. I want to go back and the European side now in 1804 is when the Napoleonic Code was written and followed by most of the European countries in one way or another. Does anybody know the biggest difference between the Napoleonic Civil Code and the American common law or American laws today? Don't put anybody on the spot, but there's no right to a jury under the Napoleonic Code. We maintain the right of jury here. The Mormon Church, I think this is important because they set out in their church their own laws and commandments. The commandments that had to be followed as much as the same type of Sharia law or ecclesiastical law of Christians with Confucius. So almost any time you have a religion, you're going to have laws come forward, okay? So that's interesting, the combination of the two. And I kind of threw this in because a friend of mine is Creek Indian, and the Indians had their own religion, their own institutions, and of course they were decimated by what we did in 1838 and 1839, and were taken out of Georgia and Florida and had to go to Oklahoma. I had to throw in the law of the West, Pecos, Judge Roy Bean. You looked at him wrong, he could hang you. And that's kind of the main things that I wanted to cover here. There's still a lot that I haven't even, I got a whole presentation here. Maybe I'll stay from, I'll give this from like 9 to 11 tonight here. Anybody wants to stay, okay? But I'm sure there'll be something like it. Okay, so that's basically, we covered a lot of stuff from Becky Pepe, which probably was the first civic, religious, and as I said, you were a little bit late, but all the things that we talked about are going to be on the exam that are going to be given, so you have to, anyway. Okay, so, questions? Law and religion. What a fascinating, to me, subject, and we've gone through the religion part of it, and so we kind of want to touch on the importance of law and the combination of institution, rules, goals, practitioners, relationships.
So
Questions?
is that your focus, is religion?
Tonight?
But when you practice law?
No, see, she had some participation. It's a good question. My area of expertise is I used to be a federal prosecutor, and I was with the U.S. Attorney's Office in San Antonio. But what I do now is I mainly represent doctors, lawyers, and judges who don't play well with others, who are generally into sex, drugs, and rock and roll, or all combination thereof, and have problems of licensing before the Texas Medical Board, or before the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel, or before the other licensing boards for other professionals. Okay, yes, sir.
Why the change?
After 40 years doing the same thing every day, you kind of want a little variety, and so I prosecuted, was with the government altogether 5 years. I wanted to have more of a challenge going out in private practice. I was corporate counsel for Guatemala, which was the Coca-Cola bottling company in Guatemala. That was kind of fun, but things brought me back to Houston, and this is kind of in the twilight of my career is what I enjoy doing. I did a lot of criminal law. Problem with practicing criminal law is you got to deal with a lot of criminals, and so that sometimes gets challenging. I'm sorry?
I work in criminal law.
You work in criminal law? I'm sorry?
It's my favorite law to practice. Well, I'm not a lawyer yet, but I will.
You hope to be. Well, good. I think, law, we need dedicated women to...
Yeah, I have to deal with a lot of criminals, and
What do you do?
I'm the paralegal.
In a law firm?
Yes, in one of the top law firms.
Can you tell us which one?
Break on England.
Sorry?
Break on England.
Okay. You're learning a lot of things.
Oh, yeah. Why?
So you don't have to tell, obviously, the name of your client, of course you don't go into that, but what's the worst crime you've come across?
The worst one?
Worst one. Bloody, gory, messy, nasty,
Cartel
stinky. I'm
crimes,
sorry?
Drug deals.
Drug deals is the worst thing you've come across?
Yeah, I'll tell you something funny on that one. All the lawyers couldn't talk to the guy because he didn't speak English. So they take me in there and they have to question him, ask him questions, who these people are, all this stuff. Anyway, it turns out that he tells me the name of his leader.
Supplier, his leader.
And yeah,
The
it's
Hefe.
pretty much.
You probably didn't want to know that.
Well, I got a raise out of that, so they couldn't find out. They couldn't get all the information. I got all the information they wanted. It was a good case. Either he, right now he's in federal prison, but he's safe.
Okay, well, good. So that was you were the right person at the right time, so that was
I
good.
guess it is. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions, concerns, inquiries about law and religion? Yes, ma'am.
So, in all of your practice, all the years of studying and researching law and religion, would you say that there's been a heavy impact of religion in those who do practice law? Being like, as a lawyer, like a prosecutor, if you know that there's the moral judgment, I guess, of defending a criminal, knowing that he probably did all that, how do you think that really weighs heavily on the service that they're actually getting? And do you think do people like just not pay attention to that more so these days than they did maybe in the past?
Okay, so there are several parts of that question, so let's try to break those down, okay? Let me see if I can break them down for you. The first question is, do you feel that you might lose sleep or you have problems with defending somebody that's committed a crime? Okay, so that's the first part. No, in fact, I would rather have somebody knowing that they committed a crime, because if they've committed a crime, what will happen is that they will either get the exact punishment that they should, or they'll get something that's less, but still some type of punishment. The chances are also possible that they will get more than they should deserve, and so you got a really 2 out of 3 chances of getting it right, okay? If you got somebody that's innocent, no matter what happens except they go free and they have to go through the trial, that's kind of a bad outcome. So it's in many ways easier to defend somebody knowing that they have told you that yes, I stole, yes, I did the drug deal, yes, I, like Lizzie Borden gave her 23 whacks. But the one thing that we have to keep in mind, that under the American system of law, is that everyone is entitled to a right of jury. Everyone is entitled to the day in court. Everyone's entitled to an attorney. And there's no other system that really gives the safeguards that we do. And I don't know whether you've heard about this guy, Anthony Graves, but Mr. Graves was on death row for about 15 years on a murder up in Williamson that he didn't do. And I was involved in that case trying to get the things changed. And you know, I don't think there's anything worse than knowing in your mind that you prosecuted somebody that is entirely innocent and you don't do anything about it. I think that'd be horrible. As far as I'm concerned, all the cases I prosecuted, the evidence was so overwhelming, I don't have any questions at all that you know, they did it. Now, the outcome in federal court is determined by the judge. He makes the sentencing, and so that's his problem, not my problem. As a prosecutor, my job is just simply to present the case, and the jury makes a decision, and then the judge sentences. And you have a high burden in criminal law. You have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. If the glove doesn't fit, you have to acquit. So anyway, other questions about law, religion? Is Professor Ali a tough grader? I mean, you know, what else? Okay, thank you.
I want to ask one proud personal question. Throughout this entire career of yours and being a man of religion with high values of Christian values, were there moments, as I think any practicing religious person faces during these days, challenges with your theology? Were there moments that you felt between your, like, torn apart between your theology and your practice?
You know, I really have never been put in an awkward position like that. Again, you know, I've never had to defend or prosecute a capital case. I've never had to deal with somebody that dealt with child molestation. I've never involved in cases like that. You know, I think that was good. I did have some questions about a group of people that were trying to shut down a Planned Parenthood center. Okay, and for me, I felt that, you know, there were some very good services that Planned Parenthood provides, but these people need representation, so I went ahead and represented them. But that was, again, the fact that they needed representation, and somebody had asked me to do it. So I've never had an ethical quandary about doing that. I just have never been faced with that, and that's also, I do some business law, and that's over money, and you know, so that's, you know, yeah, let's get some more money out of them or try to keep them from getting more money. So that's not been a problem. Okay.
Thank you so
Any
much.
other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You didn't answer the question you started off your lecture with about what's the difference between religion and law.
Well, there is, obviously there are two very important spheres of influence, okay? And as far as differences, it's almost impossible to answer unless you isolate it as to what you're asking about. I mean, there's in both law and in religion, there are institutions, there are practitioners, there's goals, there's rules. So they're certainly different, but they're interrelated, and that's probably maybe not the best answer in the world, but the one I'm going to stick to. Okay. And one that gives rise, again, when you see all the history and the culture, you see how Sharia law was practiced. You see how people were. Did anybody learn for the first time about Salem witch trials? I'm just curious. Well, you're probably not going to confess, okay? But this to me is one of the more interesting parts of our American history. It never happened since like that, even though we've had some horrible trials and people wrongfully persecuted and wrongfully convicted. But we've never had this combination that happened in Salem in 1690. So anyway, there we are. So I got to drive all the way to downtown Houston when I finish this. So are we finished? I'm happy to answer more questions.
Why did you go to law school?
I went to law school. I received my BA and MA from George Washington, Washington, D.C., and then came to Houston for my law degree. And I've always thought that I've been well served by the University of Houston. It's not in the top 10 law schools, but certainly in the top 20, 25. Some very bright professors, and very good law school. And I think generally the law schools in Texas are real good. So they've served lots of attorneys well. So if you're thinking about going to law school, I would encourage you to give it a lot of thought. It's not easy. It is not easy. And then once you pass all your courses and get through law school, then you get to sit for the bar exam, which is 3 days of intense examination, which is not bad. But anyway, if I can do it, no question you can do it.
Thanks so much. Thank you.